Okay, so let's dive right into this. We're going to deconstruct a hypothetical US-Iran conflict and its absolutely massive consequences. We'll break down how one single military decision can send shockwaves across a nation and really the entire world.
And it all starts here, with what observers called President Trump's single biggest political and military risk. This wasn't just some routine foreign policy decision. This was a massive roll of the dice, with the power to completely redraw the map on the Middle East.
So you gotta ask, what was the thinking behind a gamble this huge? Well, in this first part, we're going to explore the motivation behind Operation Epic Fury, this military strike that went ahead even though there were some pretty serious warnings about how messy it could get.
Well, according to reporting from Reuters, the administration wasn't just playing defense here. Not at all. They saw this as a massive, high-reward shot to fundamentally change the balance of power in the region and to change it in America's favor.
And when you look at the goals, man, they were incredibly ambitious. The whole strategy was banking on this idea that a few well-placed strikes could do it all. Dismantle Iran's military, get the Iranian people to rise up, and wrap everything up quickly without getting stuck in another forever war.
So how did this giant gamble go over back home? As you can probably guess, a move this big didn't exactly bring everyone together for a group hug. In fact, right from the jump, the country was just completely split on it.
A CNN poll that came out right after the first attacks really put a number on that division. And it showed that a pretty big majority, we're talking nearly 6 out of every 10 Americans, were not on board with the military strike. That put the administration in a tough spot with the public right away.
But here's where it gets really interesting. When you dig into those numbers, you see it wasn't just a simple disagreement. It was a massive split, right down party lines. You had overwhelming support from Republicans, while Democrats and independents were strongly against it. It's like the country was watching two totally different events unfold.
And beyond what people thought about it, this decision came with a staggering price tag. The cost just started climbing every single day, and it really made people ask some hard questions about the country's priorities.
Just a few days in, the Center for American Progress was already estimating the cost at over $5 billion. And that's not just for bullets and bombs. That number also includes losing some incredibly advanced and very, very expensive military gear.
To put the economic reality into an even sharper focus, former Secretary of State Antony Blinken pointed out this massive cost imbalance. He said the U.S. was firing $4 million missiles to shoot down Iranian drones that cost like $20,000. You have to wonder, how long can you keep that up?
To make these giant numbers feel a little more real, let's just zero in on one weapon. Just one. A single Tomahawk cruise missile. The price for one of those? $2.2 million.
And this is where you see the real-world trade-offs, right? That same $2.2 million could have paid for a full year of healthcare for 775 kids on Medicaid, or it could have bought school lunches for over 3,600 children for an entire year. That's the stuff that gets cut when the military price tags get this high.
All this talk about the insane costs, well, you can bet that just added fuel to a political firestorm that was already brewing in Washington. Lawmakers from both parties started getting loud, saying the administration had been misled into a war for all the wrong reasons.
Critics in Congress started laying out a very specific timeline. They'd point to these high-profile visits from the Israeli prime minister, which were followed by tougher talk from the U.S., then more troops in the region, and boom, a joint attack. To them, it looked less like America was responding to a threat and more like it was working on an ally's schedule.
Yet critics like Senator Mark Warner were pretty blunt about it. He called it a war of choice. He basically argued that the U.S. jumped into a fight based on Israel's timing and its concerns, not because there was a direct, immediate threat to America.
And you heard that sentiment from others too, like Representative Pramila Jayapal. The way she framed it, this was long-standing pressure from Israel to hit Iran, pressure that past presidents had always pushed back on.
And look, this wasn't just a one-sided complaint. You had some Republicans, like Representative Thomas Massie, also blasting the reasoning and the unbelievable cost of it all. He said America had been dragged into a war that was just draining money and lives.
So what was the administration's response to all this heat? Well, they defended the move. Secretary of State Marco Rubio's argument was basically that Israel was going to attack anyway, so the U.S. had to get involved to try and control the situation and to protect American troops from the retaliation they knew was coming.
So the big takeaway here is that this one single decision created this massive cascade of consequences. It left the country wrestling with a situation that wasn't just unbelievably expensive, but also split the nation right down the middle. When you step back, you see a nation caught in this web. You've got a divided public, a budget stretched to its limit, and a huge fight over why the war even started. And that's not even mentioning the chaos it caused globally, messing with energy markets and making gas prices soar.
And all of that really just boils down to one final lingering question. It's about consequences, about who's accountable and what the real cost is. When a nation takes a gamble this big, who's the one that ultimately pays the price?